My name is Lila May Henderson, and I have buried two things in this life: a good man and a version of myself that believed family never steals. People think grief makes you soft. Sometimes it makes you sharp enough to cut paper lies into confetti. Harold died on a Monday, the kind of clear winter day that makes the sky ring like glass. We were married 34 years. He fixed radios and listened to people carefully, like tuning a station until a static moved aside. The ambulance lights looked vulgar in our driveway, like neon at a church. I held his hand until they told me to let go. I did not scream. I have learned that real love does not perform. My sister, Patrice, drove over before the coroner left. She hugged me tight, and I let her. Patrice is 3 years younger and carries herself the way salespeople carry perfume. She enters, and the room has to adjust. "I've got you," she said, rubbing my shoulders like I was a cat you can pet into calm. We planned a simple funeral. Harold liked hymns you can hum without a choir. Patrice ran errands. She is good at that. She color-coded the program in her little spiral and told me to drink water every hour. The morning of the service, she appeared in a red wrap dress that would have made Harold raise both eyebrows and then smile, because he was polite. "Don't judge me," she laughed, dabbing my eyes. They had nothing in black in my size. People came. They told me stories. Grief is a parade of details you wish you'd noticed when the person could still enjoy hearing them. After, we laid out fried chicken and potato salad at the church hall, and I took my shoes off under the folding table because I didn't need to be tall anymore. 2 days later, I opened the mail. It is hard to describe the way a man's name looks when it sits on paper without a pulse attached. Harold Henderson, policy benefits. I have forgotten about the small life insurance through his union. Enough to cover the funeral and paint the porch. Harold kept promising to paint when it got warmer. The letter was not a check. It was a notice of beneficiary change confirmation. It said the beneficiary had been updated 2 weeks before Harold died. It said the new beneficiary was Patrice Elaine Carter. It congratulated me on my recent administrative update like we had ordered cable. Down at the bottom, a neat signature in blue. Lila M. Henderson. I put the paper down. I picked it up. The loops on the L and the H looked like mine, the way my hand dips when I sign too fast. It was as if my name had been photocopied through someone else's wrist. I called the insurer. A recorded woman thanked me for being part of the family, which felt like a joke God didn't write. When a human answered, I asked how a beneficiary gets changed. "Online or in person," she said. "We require a signed form and a photo ID for in-person requests." "And you keep those?" "Scan to the file, then show me," I said. "Ma'am, we can only release that to the policy owner or the authorized beneficiary. I am the widow." "I understand," she said softly, which is what people say right before they push you into a maze. "But the owner authorized the change. We'd need a fraud affidavit to proceed." Fraud is one of those words that feels cold in the mouth. I hung up and called Patrice. "Hey, baby," she answered, bright and warm. "You okay? I'm about to swing by with some chili. Did you go to Harold's union office last month?" Silence is a weather report you can read if you grew up in the same house. "Why do you ask?" She said, "Because his beneficiary changed." "To you? That must be a mistake," she said quickly. "You know how these companies are. Do not get yourself worked up." "Were you wearing a red dress?" I asked. She laughed, but the sound did not land. "Lila, stop, Patrice," I said. And I used the voice Mama used when we were little and she caught us with cookie sugar on our lips. "Don't make me go down there and ask a clerk what you wore. He will remember." She hung up. "I am not a screamer. I am a list maker." I found Harold's folder, the one with the union card and the little booklet nobody reads. I drove to the union office myself. The woman at the window wore a pin that said "Do everything with love" and a face that said she had seen people do the opposite all week. "I need to file a fraud complaint," I said, handing her my ID and the notice. She clicked and frowned and clicked again. "There is a scanned form," she said. "Signed by you." "Show me." She did not want to. Then she did. The screen showed my name under a clause that might as well have been titled "Make a Widow Crazy." The signature could have fooled a bank. Attached was a photo of the ID used to verify the change, cropped, grainy, but still. It was my driver's license, only it wasn't. The address was right. The number was right. My face was my face. But the expiration date was wrong by 2 years. And a tiny, almost silly thing, the sticker on the bottom corner, the one Harold always teased me for never peeling, was missing. The clerk printed me a copy. "We see fake IDs smoother than butter now," he said. "But they usually don't come with the right smiles." "Who submitted it?" I asked. "Can't say." He paused, lowered his voice. "But you might speak to Mr. Upton down the hall. He didn't like the way it went down." Mr. Upton was 6'5" and wore a tie that had been to more funerals than weddings. He offered me a seat in a peppermint. "The young lady who came in with that form," he said quietly, "was in a hurry. Knew exactly what to say. Had answers before I asked questions, which is a tell. I asked whose idea it was to make the change. She said, family decision. I asked who signed. She slid the paper close and said the widow she was wearing. Well, I remember the color red, I said. He nodded once. The kind of red that doesn't apologize, I thanked him. On my way out, I stopped at the front desk. If the beneficiary is disputed, I asked, what happens to the payout? It is held, she said, until resolved, then hold it, I said. Do not pay a dime. I drove home with the kind of steadiness that scares people more than yelling. Patrice was waiting on my porch. She had a box of Harold's baseball caps like a peace offering. I did not do this to hurt you, she said before I had the door open. I did it because you are too generous. You would have given the whole thing to church or to Marcus or to a roof. I was protecting the family from me? I asked. You're grieving, she said, which is a sanctified way of calling someone unfit. Let me handle things. You forged my name, I said. You took my face somewhere I did not go, she flinched. But she did not fold. You know I can sign like you. We swapped birthday cards our whole lives. Remember Mama laughing? I can't tell who's who. We were children, I said. Children pretend. Grown women steal. Don't be dramatic. I set the caps down. Patrice, listen to me. The payout is frozen. The union flagged the change. The insurer asked for a fraud affidavit. I will sign it tomorrow. If you step 1 foot closer to this, you will not be my sister in the eyes of a court. Her mouth twisted the way it did when we were 9, and I wouldn't trade the bigger slice. You always think you're better. No, I said. I think I know the difference between love and theft. She left. The caps stayed. That night I pulled out what Harold called my brass tacks book, a red notebook where I write the facts that feelings try to smudge. I wrote dates and names in the color red. I wrote fake ID and clerk remembered dress and signature matched but not mine. Then I wrote the thing I didn't want to write. Patrice knows my passwords. We used to swap phones at Thanksgiving to show photos. We used the same 4-number code because it was Mama's birthday, and we thought that made it holy. 6 months ago, after Harold's first scare, Patrice insisted we streamline bills. I'll help you set up autopay, she said sweet, tapping her nails on my kitchen table. She had my email. She had my security questions. She knew what church I joined in 1998 and what street the library sat on when I was 10. Thieves don't always need to break in when you hand them the keys. The next morning, I visited the bank. Put a watch on my account, I told the manager. If anybody tries to pull a payment connected to that policy or that union, I want a call. She nodded, serious. I went to the post office and rented a P.O. box because Patrice knows my mail slot. Like she knows my face. I went to the DMV and asked for a note to be placed on my license file. Do not reissue without in-person verification. The woman behind the counter looked at me with the respect reserved for customers who show up fully awake. On my way home, the funeral home called. Ms. Henderson, the director said gently, we wanted to follow up about the balance. Mrs. Carter said the benefit is delayed. Mrs. Carter is my sister, I said. Do not accept a check from her. I will pay you Friday. I hung up and sat in my car with the engine off until I could hear my own breath settle. People talk about closure like it's a door you can shut and walk away from. But grief is a house without a back exit. And now there was somebody rattling my windows from the outside. That evening, a clerk at the insurer called me back. We've reviewed the scan, she said. There are irregularities. Tell me something good. The notary stamp is real, she said. But the commission number belongs to a notary 3 counties away. The stamp was likely lifted from a legitimate document and placed on your form, cut and paste. I said flat, yes? MAM, then stop the payout and give me the affidavit. We already have, she said. And Miss Henderson? Yes, our office manager was at the union that day. She remembers your. The woman hesitated, searching for a safe word, relative. The red dress stood out. I thanked her and put the phone down like it weighed a little more than it had before. At midnight, Patrice texted me, we need to talk without lawyers, please. I did not answer. I made tea. I prayed the prayer I don't like to admit I pray, Lord. Tell me what's mine, and protect it from who's not. It is a selfish prayer, and a true one. In the morning, I went to see the notary whose commission number had been hijacked. Her office sat between a nail salon and a tax place. She was 70 if she was a day, and wore her hair in a bun. That said, she did not have time for foolishness. People steal my stamp all the time, she said, squinting at the printout. But they don't usually do it for their own blood. You file your affidavit, honey, and you tell that company I'll put mine on top of it. I smiled with all the teeth grief hadn't ground down. By noon, the affidavit was filed. By 5, the insurer stamped the policy under investigation. By 7, a county detective left a message that said he'd like to clarify events and resolve beneficiary ambiguity. 2 phrases that sound gentle and carry handcuffs. Inside, I sat at Harold's old desk and opened the top drawer. Inside was a photograph from our first year, him in a sweater too small, me in a skirt I couldn't afford, both of us poor and smug with it. I touched his face and said out loud, I am handling it, and for the first time since Monday. I believed me. At 9, there was a knock. I knew that knock, insistence wrapped in apology. I opened the door. Patrice stood there with a showbox. Inside, on top of old birthday cards and a dry corsage, lay my extra checkbook. The one I'd lost last spring and then shrugged off because I'm the queen of misplacing. I didn't cash any, she said quickly. I swear on mama. But I thought about it, that is not a defense, I said. She swallowed. I made a mistake. You made several, I'll fix it. You'll start by writing a statement that you altered a beneficiary form without my consent, and presented an ID in my name. You'll notarize it. You'll give it to the insurer, the union, and the detective. And then you'll leave me alone unless I ask for you. She blinked at the word notarize like it was a slap. Lila, Patrice. We looked at each other across a showbox full of things that used to mean we were girls, who shared everything. She nodded once, sharp. Fine, she said. But I did it for us. No, I said. You did it for Red. She flinched again. The way people do when color tells on them. She left. I closed the door. I locked it. I put the showbox under the desk and my name back on my spine. And that is where I stood when the detective called back, voice even, pen ready. Miss Henderson, he said, we'd like you to come in tomorrow. And if your relative contacts you tonight, please do not respond. I promised I wouldn't. Then I made chamomile and wrote 3 lines in the brass tacks book. Harold. Loved without performing. Patrice. Steals without admitting. Me. Learns without forgetting. Asterisk asterisk. And I slept, finally, like a woman who had decided to wake up. The detective's office smelled like coffee that had argued with the pot and lost. He introduced himself as Daniel Reeves' gray suit, scuffed shoes. The kind of man who apologizes with his eyes before he asks a hard question. He didn't reach for my grief. He reached for my facts. I gave them to him the way I keep them, dates, names, the notice in the mail, the union visit, Mr. Upton's peppermint and memory, the notary's commission number that didn't match, the DMV note I placed on my license file, the funeral home call, the photo of the fake ID with my face and the wrong sticker. I slid my red notebook across the desk. He flipped it open like a pastor opening a hymnal and nodded along in the quiet way of men who have learned not to fill silences with themselves. Did your sister have access to your devices? He asked. We shared too much, I said. The way families do when they choose trust because it's faster than wisdom. He didn't smile at that. May I contact the union clerk and the insurer? You may contact anyone who knows the color red. He took statements, made copies, and then asked me one last thing. If we get cooperation, would you prefer charges or correction? I prefer what belongs to me to come home, I said. Justice can decide if it needs arrest. On the way out, I called the insurer. A supervisor got on the line and spoke carefully, as if each word had to put on its shoes. Ms. Henderson, the payout is frozen pending verification. If fraud is confirmed, the beneficiary change will be voided and the original designation restored. If there was never a valid designation, it defaults to the estate. Harold filled out the paper the day he joined the union, I said. He was tidy with love even if he wasn't tidy with toolboxes. We'll find it, she said. The next afternoon, Detective Reeves invited both me and Patrice to the same building, but not the same room. I sat with a cup that pretended to be tea. Through the vent I could hear a voice I had wiped tears off since kindergarten, answering questions like she was trying not to step on glass. He came back with 2 manila folders and a look I recognized from Harold when he fixed a neighbor's radio with a dime and a prayer. We have lobby footage, he said. A woman matching your sister's description arrived with documents. The clerk identified her. The insurer has flagged the ID scan as suspect. The notary whose stamp appears has already filed an affidavit that she never witnessed your signature. I can request charges, or I can propose a path that ends with a notarized admission, an immediate revocation of the change, and a bar on your sister handling anything tied to your name. Do the path, I said. If the truth is already standing in the light, I don't need a parade, he nodded. There is one more thing. Your sister says she was protecting you from money meant to bury my husband and buy him the porch he kept promising to paint. I asked, protect me from that and see who you're really saving. He went back down the hall. 2 hours later he returned with a paper in his hand and a tiredness in his shoulders. That said people are heavier than statute books. She signed, he said. Full admission. We'll file it. The insurer will restore the beneficiary of record. When? I asked, small because I was tired of being tall. Soon, he said. They found Harold's original form this morning, scanned from 1997. He named you. I thanked him in the way my mother taught me, straight-backed. I steady, gratitude like a chair you set for a guest. On my porch that night, I took out Harold's caps and picked the one with the oil stain he couldn't scrub. I put it on and laughed to myself because it still didn't fit. Then I wrote to him in the red notebook. You were right about radios tuned long enough. And the station revealed itself, I tuned. It did. In the days that followed, the practicalities marched in, certified letters, copies stamped received, voicemails from people who had their empathy in their template and their decency in their tone. The funeral home got its check first. He was a good man, the director said. How do you know? I asked, a little too quick. Because good men have wives who don't perform goodness when the room asks for it, she said. I carried that home like a loaf still warm. Patrice stayed quiet for 3 days, which is a century in our bloodline. Then she texted. I signed. I didn't want court. I didn't want to be that woman. I'm sorry. Can I bring dinner? I stared at the little gray bubble like it could tell me if remorse was riding inside. Or just inconvenience. I put the phone down and let it be a phone. Detective Reeves called again. We're closing the file on the criminal side with a diversion agreement, he said. Her notarized statement, restitution of any costs you incurred, and a no-contact term on financial matters for 5 years. If she breathes near your bank, we unfreeze everything. We paused and put it in a box labeled evidence. That will do, I said. Put a copy of that box in the cloud. The insurer letter arrived the following week. Beneficiary restored. It came with numbers and dates, and an apology that a lawyer had boiled the sugar out of. Attached was a scan of Harold's original form, the little scrawl of his age, my name in his careful capital letters, the union rep's heavy block print. On the bottom he had added a note I'd forgotten about until I saw it again. If policy insufficient. Cell tolls not hurrying. I put my head on the table and let the sentence sit with me until the would remember me again. I paid the last funeral bill. I bought paint for the porch that exact soft blue Harold claimed would make the neighbors forgive the rest of our house. I tipped a young man from out the street to help with the railings. He told me his grandma listened to stories to fall asleep. I don't want you sleeping through mine, I said. He grinned and said, then make it good. On Sunday I made it to church for the first time since. The usher handed me a program, and I put it in my purse next to a copy of the admission. Patrice had signed. Not because I wanted to carry it, but because there was a peace in knowing the truth. Can ride without rattling. The sermon was about boundaries, though the pastor called it wisdom. And on the way out, Sister Angela squeezed my hand. Dignity is cheaper than therapy, she whispered. And I laughed in a way that didn't mortgage tomorrow. That afternoon, Patrice showed up anyway. She didn't come to the door. She sat in her car at the curb like a teenager who'd stayed out past the Your Grace. I stood in the doorway and lifted my chin. She rolled down the window. I am sorry, she said. I wanted to skip the hurting part and land on the part where we say we're family and hug. I don't skip parts, I said. That's how we lost a porch. She looked smaller than I remembered. Am I dead to you? No, I said. But you are not in my accounts, my mailbox, or my passwords. You are not in my pocketbook. If you want to come back to my table, bring your plate and wash it when you're done. If you want to be my sister, learn how to tell the truth the first time. Tears found her. I let them be hers. She nodded. Okay, she said. If you ever need, don't finish that sentence with money, I said. Finish it with time. She drove off at the speed of reconsideration. The check arrived 2 weeks later. I didn't hold it up to the light like a miracle. I set it down like bread. I paid what grief had tried to put on a tab. I opened a small account in Harold's name. Porch and radios, and took exactly enough to paint. Fixed the front steps, replaced the screen door that had learned to complain, and buy 3 vintage radios at a flea market so I could spend afternoons making noise useful again. Then I did a small thing Harold would have approved of. I sent Mr. Upton a pound cake, with a note that said peppermints save women. He sent back a photo of the empty plate. When the porch dried, kids from the block sat on the steps and compared sneakers. I told them they could come by any time as long as they didn't play who can shout the loudest. Under my window, one of them asked about the color. Harold blue, I said. What number is that? The number of the sky on a day somebody comes home. At night I talk to my husband as if he were in the next room fixing static. I tell him what the detective said, what the bank manager taught me about alerts, what the insurer put in bold, what Patrice wrote with her whole hand when the light wouldn't let her dodge it. I don't ask him if I did right. I tell him what I did and let the quiet answer in its own way. There is an ache that stays. I won't dress it up for you. Sometimes I wake and reach for the warm he isn't bringing. Sometimes I see a red dress in a store window and have to keep both feet on the ground. But there is also a steadiness I didn't have before. A backbone that remembers its job without my telling it. A week after the porch dried, the funeral director called again. I wanted to tell you something, she said. After services, people leave things behind. Programs, tissues, secrets. Your sister came back the next morning. She asked if we had any leftover water bottles. She said she wanted to take some to the workers digging the grave next to your husband's. She cried when she thought no one was looking. I don't know what that means for you. I just thought you should have the whole picture. Thank you, I said. Because the whole picture is how I prefer to live now, even when I am not a part of every corner. I took my chair to the porch, poured 2 cups of tea, and put one on the rail without apology to physics. To corrections, I said out loud. Then I added, softer, to the air that knows me, and to the women who choose documentation over fireworks. A boy from out the block pointed to one of the radios. Does it work? He asked. Sometimes, I said. You have to be patient between stations. Static doesn't mean silence. It means you're close to a song. He nodded like he understood more than I had said. That night I closed the red notebook on a final line. Love doesn't ask you to be naive. It asks you to be awake. I tucked the notebook in the desk beside Harold's caps. I turned off the lamp and let the house hum, newly painted and properly named. A little orchestra of doors that close and open the way they are meant to. If you're listening because somebody in your life changed something and said it was for your own good, here is the only part I'll preach. Learn your accounts like you learn your prayers. Put your name on your spine. And when the world shows up in a red dress calling itself family, ask it to sign in ink that doesn't wash off in the rain. In the morning I'll go buy a doormat that says welcome, which is the truth, and a lock that clicks clean, which is also the truth. I'll keep both. I have room for both now.